Welcome to another edition of Trail. Are you starting or am I starting?
I'm starting, and you're going to do that segment intro.
When you do that look, I knew I was off base.
Don and I know each other too well.
Yeah, 12 years.
Yeah. Thanks for joining another edition of Trail Runner Nation. My name's Scott Warr.
And I'm Don Freeman. And today you've joined us. We're going to talk about another segment, another mini series we've started, Scott. It's called Endurance Off the Trail. This is one of our brainchilds as we're out there running, climbing a hill, and we said, you know what? We have a lot of endurance cousins out there, a lot of different sports. And so we're talking to elite athletes that have accomplished much in their sport, and we have one today. Her name is Liz Stevens.
Just Steven.
Oh.
No S.
This is where Ryan comes in. And today we're talking to Liz Stevens. Scott?
Liz, thanks for joining us. Liz is a Nordic skier, so she comes from the endurance side of skiing on the snow. She is a former Olympian, a former U.S. Team member. She was the FIS Nordic World Ski Champ. No, she wasn't. Sorry.
I almost made.
You know what? No one we don't have a fact checker, Liz. So none of this. In 2010, Liz qualified for the 2010 Winter Olympics, and she also was on the 2014 Winter Olympics team. She announced her retirement not too many years ago in 2018, and since then we found that she has been dabbling a little bit in trail running. And so we're really excited to talk to you, Liz. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Scott and Don. I'm really happy to be here.
Hey, I just right out of the gate, I've got to ask you this question. So you've been competitive at Nordic skiing and now competitive in trail running. Where do you see these similarities? What feels the same when you lace up the shoe or slip into that boot? What feels the same and what feels different about these two sports?
Yeah, that's a good question. I guess I should probably tell you a little bit about my background and how I got involved in Nordic in the first place.
Yes, please.
I know you guys just had a good friend of mine, Steve Nyman, on the podcast not too long ago. And so my background is actually in Alpine ski racing. I started racing when I was about 6. Grew up in Vermont on a small ski hill called Burke Mountain. And ended up falling in love with Alpine skiing, and in conjunction, started running races also when I was 6. I loved the two sports so much. I tried every other sport. I tried basketball and soccer and, played baseball for a little while. And I loved all of those sports, but I was not good at any of them, with maybe the exception of baseball. I can throw, but that's about it. And I like to go in a straight line, just using my body to do things. And the distraction of the ball just didn't really set with me. And so I ended up going to Burke Mountain Academy, which is a ski academy in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont. Small school, 65 people total, and went there originally for alpine skiing. And when I was a sophomore, I started in 8th grade at the school. And when I was a sophomore, I had gone to a summer camp in Zermatt, Switzerland. One of the benefits of skiing and probably running at a really high level, it seems to, any sport maybe at a really high level, you get to travel a ton. And so when I was, young, 15, I was going over to these incredible places. And for some reason, I just couldn't seem to enjoy it anymore. And I was finding myself really unhappy in Zermatt, Switzerland, which is one of the most beautiful places in the world. And so I knew something was wrong, and kind of really loved the school, but you have to be a skier. And the only other sport there was Nordic, which I had no interest in doing at all. I thought it was dorky. I was I'm not wearing spandex skiing around the woods. That's just not for me. But I figured I should try it just because I love to run and I really wanted to go to the school. So I tried it. And of course, I instantly fall in love with not only the sport, but the people. And it seemed to feed this need for a small community, which I grew up in a small community. It's where I thrive. That's why I love the school so much. And both the running community and the Nordic ski community are these tiny little, kind of not elitist, just kind of very homegrown type of sports where it feels like both are always looking for new people. They're not like, are you good enough to be here? They're like, come on in, we'll teach you, we'll show you, we'll clothe you, we'll like everything. So that's what I felt like immediately when I joined the Nordic squad. And so I kind of fell in love with that, and it really lined up well with my running, which I was really into pretty competitive running in high school, the cross country team. And I actually stayed at my public school for a couple extra falls just so I could run cross country, because Burke Mountain Academy didn't originally have a cross country running team. And then the last couple of years, we started one at Burke and ended up running with them and skiing. And then, stayed one extra year after high school. And in 2006, made the U.S. ski team for Nordic. And the rest is history. Spent the next 12 years on the team, went to 3 Olympics. And it was like, and now I'm coaching the high school kids. So it's like, it's wonderful. And I think to answer your original question, I mean, running and skiing are so similar. I mean, there's so many crossovers for like just the average human out there too, who's like has, a job that has nothing to do with sport and maybe have never even been involved in sport when they were a child. And it's like these communities are very welcoming. It's accessible at all different levels, which I find really amazing, and it's cheap. So it's all very welcoming. And so I think the crossover is it's obvious in the community sense. And then it's also obvious in the endurance sense. Just like you need, there's more strength and power involved in cross country skiing as opposed to in most running, with the exception of sprinting, obviously. But like the two crossover very, very well. And we used it. I mean, running was like half of my training when I was training competitively for skiing. So it fed my need to be in the woods. I love the solo time. Like I just love being alone in the mountains in new places and seeing, 4 times as much stuff as you would if you were just getting to hike. So those are the things that's my happy place, like to be out alone or with friends in the mountains. I don't think life gets better than that.
Well, when I asked that question, I didn't expect that beautiful answer, because it's the culture, the community, it's the embracing. Just come on over. Doesn't matter how good you are. Wherever you start is where you are, and tomorrow you'll be better. It's that kind of, we'll teach you, we'll show you. That is quite a parallel. So I have 2 issues, and I'm going to bring the first one up.
We're still in the first 10 minutes, Freeman. You already have issues?
I do. She said it was cheap. Now, I was told running was cheap, too. You've got shoes, you got a pair of pants, make them shorts with some scissors. Come on out. Doesn't cost a thing. It costs some money to play this game sometimes. There's watches, and there's packs, and there's shoes, and it goes on and on. And I can imagine wearing spandex and strapping on a set of, it's not any cheaper than running. So cheap, I'm going to have issue with that. Number 2, and not an issue, but I want to know this. You look at a mountain. What do you see? A trail or snow?
Oh, I see the possibility of a trail, probably.
Under the snow.
I love like looking. So I moved to Utah in 2006, and that's where I am today. And I stayed because of the mountains. I actually missed the small Vermont back road town that I grew up in, and that's where my parents still are. But I love the mountains here, and it's very hard to think about leaving them because it's so accessible. Even where there's no trails, it's accessible a lot of places. And so, I think I see the possibility of there must be a trail on that mountain. We should go find it. And if there isn't one, maybe we should, make one.
Cool.
So Liz, it sounds like, you were a runner originally, even before you were a Nordic skier, but I want to get to the transition from Alpine to Nordic. What kind of endurance changes did you have to adapt in your training to go from Alpine fast, anaerobic, smashing the gates to more of a Nordic style of an event? Did you have to shift your training at all?
Yeah, I think that probably, like, of course, hindsight is 2020, but I think part of the reason that I kind of fell out of love, if you will, with Alpine racing, I still love to ski, but the racing felt like a little confined, maybe in some ways for me, where every day seemed to be, the higher the level you get, the more you spend time in gates, and the more time you spend timing your runs in gates. And I was a small, this probably like just adding a little element here. I was a really small kid. I mean, I was like, when I started in 8th grade, I think I was like 80 pounds and like 4'11". Like I was tiny. And so, and I'm not that much bigger now. I'm like 5'2", so I grew a few inches, but so that, like, I think that I would often find myself at the bottom of the hill wishing that it was still like 3 or 4 times longer, because I was like, felt like I wasn't done yet. And that's where running, like I would do a 5K with the, in a cross country race, and I was like done, it was like beyond done. Because you have that ability to push and push and push. And I think Steve would tell you, Nyman would tell you something totally different, because he was like, I mean, at the level that he was skiing at, and at really any level of good Alpine racing, you're like, those guys are pumping a lot of lactic acid. I mean, I think Steve would tell you he's like 25 at the bottom of like a downhill run, which, if that doesn't mean anything to you, that's extremely high. If you checked into the hospital with that, they would think you were dying. And so like these, I mean, it's the comparison of the two sports, like one harder than the other, is not one I like even want to, they're just totally different. And I think for me, it was like, I just needed more. I needed longer to like get to where I felt like I was done. And, an Alpine race is a minute or minute and a half. And I loved that part of it. But I think part of the training that I didn't, that I felt like I needed to change was, I wanted to spend all this time like running and, lifting weights and being strong and outside and active. And I think I didn't get as much out of like that gym time, where it was like, you play soccer and you bike and you like, and you lift a ton of weights, and not as much running. It was kind of like starting to become, it needed to get kind of more out of my life. And I was like bringing it, I wanted it like closer to me. So certainly the training is different. But I think it was more just that, like, I wasn't done at the end of the Alpine race. I didn't get that feeling that I needed to really fall in love with the sport, or keep my love of the sport, maybe I should say.
Now, Liz, when you said Steve was at the bottom of the hill and his lactic acid threshold was 25, and you would think he was dying, when I saw him in the middle of a run and he was coming down tucked and traveling at 90 miles an hour plus, I thought he was dying at that point. So yeah. I guess you're vulnerable anywhere through the run, top or bottom. Go ahead, Scott.
Liz, you mentioned something and I took a note of it, and I want to get back to it. You mentioned, as you were comparing Nordic to trail running, that maybe Nordic had more strength. You needed to be stronger physically in Nordic skiing. Can you talk about that? And is there, we've talked about this a lot on the podcast, that a lot of times trail runners don't want to go to the gym. They want to go outside. They don't want to go inside. They want to go outside, and to do strength training or interval training or hill, they avoid strength training. So I want you to kind of compare Nordic strength training to trail running, and then make the jump to, do you think that trail runners should be stronger?
Okay,
that was a long and involved question. Sorry about that.
Okay, so yeah, let's see. To start, to answer your first question,
do you remember it, Liz? Do you even know the first question? Because I'm thinking, I'm like on question 3, and that's as far back as I can go.
Well, I'm going to start with I think you first asked, like, what does it look like to be kind of in the gym as a Nordic skier?
Yep.
And why are we in there? So Nordic skiing is a full body power endurance sport. It's, you have to, if you look at the best in the world, they have big shoulders. We're very plyometric oriented. Doesn't mean you have to jump really high, but we certainly use that plyometric base for our training a lot in the gym. And that like springy, powerful sport that if you, especially if you watch like a sprint race for Nordic, I think a lot of times people, when you hear cross country skiing, you think of like old school cross country skiing where you're kind of out walking in the woods in a straight line. And if you haven't seen the sport recently, you should for sure like watch a Nordic race, because it's a very different sport than it used to be. And it's really exciting. And I know I'm a little biased, but I do think it's quite exciting, especially if you're watching a sprint race. So take the time if you haven't. This winter, we actually have our first World Cup in the US in oh man, since 2001, I believe.
Wow.
In Minneapolis, and that's in late February. So that's a little pitch there. You can check that out. But that kind of power, if you're not powerful and you're not strong, you won't make it very far in our sport. Endurance will only take you so far. And I mean, there have been people saying that Nordic skiers are some of the most fit people in the world. And I think that comes from this ability to blend this power endurance sport with, or powerful, plyometric, springy sport with this incredible endurance. Because the courses are hard, and we tend to be slightly bigger in terms of upper body strength and maybe leg strength than your average ultra runner, or even just 5K runner. And that's just because we have to use our whole bodies to propel us up the hill, and down the hill. So, to blend that, I think your next question was how should runners maybe be in the gym, and what are the benefits of that? I would say that I am experiencing, so I am with you runners. I want to be outside. I don't want to be in the gym. I want to be on the trails. However, I am currently dealing with a stress fracture in my femur, because and I really truly believe that, among a few other reasons, I did not spend enough time doing the background work, such as the gym work that I needed to stay strong enough so that I wasn't pounding on the wrong things. But I want to be outside. And in the summer, I really want to be outside. In the fall, and it's ironic because now it's beautiful fall here, and I'm sitting inside and swimming and doing stuff that I don't want to do either. But that that strength and power part of running, where you can really benefit from having quad strength and actually even some arm strength, and certainly core strength for technique for your running. It's depending especially on what kind of running you're doing. But I would say ultra runners should be in the gym a couple days a week, in my opinion. And I think that you can see that crossover sometimes, with someone like Courtney Dauwalter. Her background is in Nordic. Morgan Aratola, she was she would be a cool one. If you haven't had her on the podcast, she'd be a cool one to interview too. But you see these Nordic skiers that come. Adam Loomis actually is another one, that end up kind of at the top of the ultra world as well. And I think it's, in combination with incredible amounts of training for years and years, but also that strength background that we have, and that it kind of, I believe it keeps you feeling good for longer, so that you're not just pounding on your joints all the time. I think it helps with injury prevention, technique. And you can see kind of that movement coming across, I think, into the running community. I don't think it will be long before that's really a part of, especially, I assume it already is part of the very top runners, and what they're doing, but certainly in just the average community who love to run. I think that's a piece that's missing. And I think that's why we're seeing so many injuries over and over. That's my thought. That's my 2 cents on it.
Well, I think it's a good 2 cents, and I never really, paused long enough to think about how similar these two sports are, how many parallels there are, and we'll probably discover more as questions are asked. But I'm going to ask you this question first, and pause for a moment so everybody that's listening can kind of think of their answer, because it almost seems like a non-question after I think about it. So here it is. But there's only one question involved in it, so you don't have to keep going.
This will be the easy one,
okay.
Not the 4-parter.
And Scott and I love to tease each other about that. So I hope nobody knows that thinks I'm trying to jab them too hard. Do you use poles when you run?
Ooh.
Yeah. Okay. So I haven't done as many ultra races as I was hoping to be doing. I was kind of my zone I was hoping to go into when I stopped skiing. And some things have kind of changed the way my life the path I like envisioned. It never goes perfectly according to plan. But in the races that I've done, I have not used poles. That said, I did a ton of training with poles when I was Nordic skiing and racing. And I think that running with poles is that like, I mean, it certainly ups your heart rate, but it also takes some of the brunt off of your legs, which at the end of the day, runners need to have fresh, strong legs to keep going, and a strong head. But we can get into that later. But I think that running, you know, like with poles and having them as a backup, especially because they're so light now and you can just throw them on your pack. Seems like to me it's like a no-brainer because it's just like one more tool to have in your back pocket. And I think if you are thinking of using them, you should do like 50% of your training with them. Because if you just chuck poles on your hands, you're going to spike your heart rate right off the bat. Because you're just using different muscles than you've trained to use in that capacity. But I think they're an awesome tool personally.
So here's the other question. And this may go way over Don's head.
Oh, it will.
But when you're running with poles, are you doing a V1 style with the poles or?
I like that.
See, Don just, his eyes just glazed over. That was my only knowledge that I have for this entire podcast over the 12 years is that one statement. Do you use the V1 style when you run?
I use V3 personally.
So I would probably just use traditional striding technique, like opposite arm, opposite leg, just like walking. That's probably what I would do. I know some people do kind of like a double pole type of like, you know, kind of like plant them both and run through them, which I could see depending on what the terrain, maybe how tight the trail is, things like that. But I think in general, I would just run with, you know, with the poles or hike with the poles, just normal walking style, but personal preference, I think. Definitely not V1 though. I feel like V1 would not be the option.
Liz, is there even a V1? Did Scott pull this out and you're covering him because you guys are both ski people and you're like, we'll talk about this after we hit pause on the record. What is a V1?
Do you want me to demonstrate, Don?
Oh yeah. I think Scott makes stuff up.
Well, before you demonstrate, Liz, I want to tell you that I use V1 when I run with poles, and I run with poles a lot. And I've tried to show Don how to do it, but it takes more coordination than just the regular, you know, pendulum. Anyway, yes. So go ahead and show him, because what he's going to see, he's seen me do before, and I've actually showed him how to do it, and he just goes, "That's stupid. I'm not doing that."
I don't know if I said that.
Okay. V1 is a technique that you use with skate skiing for cross-country skiing, and it's usually used, pretty much only used when you're going up a hill. So it's like gear 1, if you think about like a standard car. It's like the first gear. It's getting super steep. And so you have a little bit of like an offset with your hands. They're kind of like, they're here, you know? And so you're crunching down with your poles and then you're kicking over. And it's like this asymmetrical movement. It's kind of like the only asymmetrical movement of cross-country skiing, almost.
I've seen Scott do that, but I just thought it was because he was tired. I didn't know.
Well, that could be it too.
I had to get to gear 1, Freeman. That's what I'm telling you. Well, now after your answer to that, I'm going to abandon V1, because now people are going to laugh at me saying, you know, even the Olympic Nordic skiers, they say, no, you don't use V1 trail running. So anyway.
Well, you know, you might be there's always going to be that one guy, you know, that first guy who tried skate skiing, like, and now it's a movement. So you could be that guy, Scott.
I've been told that a number of times. You're that one guy. Oh, gee.
Can I ask you two a question?
Oh, yeah. Ask Scott.
How did you? What are your running backgrounds, and how and why did you start this podcast?
Oh boy, that's a loaded question. I started running because Don and I had a common friend that was a marathoner and an ultra runner, and he was going through cancer and had a surgery, and he was coming back from that cancer, and so he was out of shape. And I thought, this is a way that I can help him maybe get in shape. I'd always wanted to run a marathon. And so I said, why don't we go out and train? And we would go out and train on trails. And that's how I got started.
That's cool.
I started way back when. Do you remember the show Rocky Balboa? In the very beginning, I no, it was just after Black and White, I think. So it was some time back, and I was watching that, probably 11, and I saw Rocky, the two eggs drinking the thing. Now I did that, but only once. But I started running with a friend early in the morning, like 8th grade or something, and I just loved the challenge, and then I abandoned it for a while. And life goes on, and then slipped back into it when the same person that Scott is talking about, Jeff, said, "Hey, I just ran a marathon." And I said, just to be friendly, "Yeah, I'd like to do that." And that was it. Then he called me out, and I had to show up at 7 the next morning and run around with him. And then he told me about his uncle that won a jacket from running a 50-mile race. And I thought, well, that would be good. I don't need a jacket, but that would be cool. Then it all started from there. And Scott and I hooked up, and we've been slow friends ever since.
Slow on the trail. Slow on the
really
trail.
Cool.
But I think it's important. I'm going to answer the third part of your question. See, Don, I'm not the only one that can ask 3-part questions. We started the podcast because Don had a lot more experience running. And as we started running together, he was teaching me certain aspects of how to be a better runner from people that he had run with. Dana Garr, Julie Fingar, none of those names mean anything to you, but people that have been around in this trail running scene and ultra running scene since the 70s and 80s. And he was able to run with them, and he was transferring that knowledge to me. And I thought, how does somebody in Iowa learn about this stuff? I mean, we live in California, Northern California, where we're at the base of our finish line of Western States 100. So there's a lot of ultra runners around here. And so you can go out to the trail and bump into these people all the time and learn from them. And I said, I want to learn, and I'm sure that there's a lot of other people out there that want to learn. And so we thought, I think we can do maybe 10 episodes and just share knowledge in 10 episodes. And now we're at 640 something odd episodes because we haven't learned.
So,
wow.
So two things.
That's really cool.
So 2 things. Number one, Scott said, "Oh yeah, we could do that. I have an MP3 player." Keep that in mind as I make this next statement. Just like in the beginning of the podcast, when we said, yeah, Nordic skiing is cheap. Yeah, trail running is cheap. Yeah, podcasting is cheap. He has an MP3 player. There's hidden costs in all these activities.
Totally.
It all adds up. And the more you do and the more you get into it, the more expensive it can get. Because you can go out on a trail and you can wear your lawn mowing shoes and a pair of cutoffs and have the most wonderful time. And then you can start adding all the accessories so that you look like a trail runner. Even if you pull over and jump into a store and come out, people are going to know you're a trail runner, not a guy mowing his lawn that needed a Gatorade or something. You're seen, if you put on all the gear, you can be seen as a trail runner. And so there's expenses tied around everything. I'm not sure that I asked a question or even answered a question, but I did take up some time on the mic. So do we have any?
Well, So Liz, that was a very, very sly approach of turning this podcast towards Don and I. That's not the reason why we started this. We started this to talk to people that know more about this than we do. Okay. And so I'm going to flip it back to you. And this is the part, Stephen Nyman, if he does listen, which I doubt he does, he stopped listening by now. So when I say this, he's not going to hear this. I grew up alpine skiing. I love alpine skiing. I used to follow it like religiously, like people follow the NFL. But probably over the last 15 years, I have found Nordic skiing way more fun to watch.
Oh.
And one of the things, especially during the Winter Olympics, I record all the Nordic events and I watch all of them. And here's the question. I think that Nordic skiing requires more precise or an advanced pacing thought or mindset than trail running does. In trail running, we just kind of go out there and run, until our heart rate goes up. And if we hit a hill, we slow down and walk it. And then if it's a downhill, we run as fast as we can without falling. But I think Nordic skiing, there's a lot more pacing involved. Can you tell us about what you've learned about pacing and how that's translated into your trail running.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Yeah, I agree. I think I agree, but I think maybe I would call it, I don't know if it's pacing, but more like strategy.
Okay.
I think like anytime you have, I mean, of course, there's technique in every sport, right? But I would say that the two sports that we're comparing, like a cross country ski, let's say a cross country skier at a high level and a 50-mile runner at a high level. Yes, there's technique in both, but I would say that the Nordic skier has more technique needed in order to be at that level.
Okay.
Whereas the runner can be extremely fit. And there are exceptions to this rule in cross country skiing too. There's some really, really good athletes that have crazy like endurance capacity and their technique isn't great. But it works because they're so fit. Same with running, probably on a slightly different level, but probably pretty similar. So I think any sport that you have a lot of technique that's needed in order to perform at a high level, there's going to be more strategy involved as well, I think, because you're not just going off of your capacity, you're also having to put that into your technique that's going to work for you in order to propel you forward faster. So maybe you're seeing a little more like strategy. The pacing piece, I think, is important for both. I've learned I'm somebody who I'm not a strategy person. Like I actually like it turns me off of a sport. Like to me, like the best sport in the world would be like, actually it's like uphill running, because you just uphill run and like the fittest person's going to win, on like if everyone showed up, their peak fitness, perfect day, the most fit person is probably going to win that race. And the person with like the best mindset, maybe like the combination of that. But you add strategy in and all of a sudden, like it's not just the most fit athlete that wins. It's like the person who shows up the best on that day and does everything right in between, which makes it a little bit more complex and like frustrating in some ways to me because I was like never really good at strategy either. I just like wanted to go hard from the gun till I died, and then that was it, and the people that are like Jessie Diggins, for example, you guys probably know that name.
Yep.
Very extremely accomplished Nordic skier, best American Nordic skier we've ever had. Also worth checking out her gold medal from the Olympics in 2018. If you haven't, for your podcast listeners, really exciting race. And she's gone on to do some, she's known as one of the athletes that has like the strongest head, maybe a little bit like Courtney Dauwalter in that way. I think she's kind of known in the running world as having that like head that's maybe just can dig into her pain cave like a little bit further every time. I love that analogy she gave on a few of the podcasts I've listened to with her. Yeah. And Jessie is very similar that way, like just can dig and dig and dig and dig, but also has a head that has matured in a way that she can now see like a bigger scope. And I think that's why she's one of the best athletes in the world, because I think when you combine those two, it becomes a really hard athlete to beat. And so I think maybe that's what you're seeing, like that strategy and fitness and pacing and all of that comes into play. And pacing is still a huge part of running, especially at those higher levels. Like where are you going to make your move? Like what pace do you, like if you start off a 50-mile race or a 100-mile race and you're running a 6-minute mile, you're probably not going to be the winner at the end, most likely, right? But if you pace it and maybe like you work your way through the race, you might be the top one at the end. So I think that's more what you're seeing is that strategy, when to sit in, when to go.
So strategy, pacing makes me think of this question. Many times you hear in trail running, someone will say, well, run your race, and maybe there's a similar like skate your race. I don't know if there's anything like that. But when you get out there and you're in a race, do you race others or are you racing yourself? For you, who's your competitor?
That's a good question. That's a loaded question almost, in a good way.
And a single question. You can have deep questions as one question.
Yeah, that maybe. So Okay, so cross country skiing, for your listeners who don't know, there's multiple different disciplines. In the Olympics, we have 6 races every year. So we're there from the start of the games to the end of the games, which is not. Alpine skiing has the same. They have many different disciplines, many different distances, or you know, techniques, I guess, modes. We have the same. We have everywhere from sprint to a 50K, and it's like throughout that whole gamut. And so within those different disciplines, there's both skate and classic, and there's also both mass start and individual start. So it's like, it would be like entering a running race, and every 30 seconds, somebody goes. So you don't know exactly where you are within that running race, if you will. Same with skiing. So there are individual start races. Every 30 seconds, someone goes, and you might get some splits out on the course. But you're really racing yourself, which I constantly feel like I'm telling my high school kids that I coach now, like, this isn't about your friend. This isn't about your competitor. This isn't about someone you want to beat. This is about you, because at the end of the day, the only person and thing you can control is yourself. And you can't control whether somebody's training, differently and it works better for them, or they show up like more prepared, or any of that other stuff. The only person you can control is yourself, and the only choices you can control are the ones you're making for yourself. And so if you're not focused on you and providing the best performance that you can, and doing all the little things and checking off all the boxes every day in training, and in the morning of the race and during the race, then you're not really getting the most out of yourself. And then it doesn't really matter who you beat or don't beat, because you didn't give your best that day. And so I think that's how I always thought of it, is like, I'm out here, I might be more distracted in a mass start, or I might have more things I can focus on that distract me from the pain I'm in. And I might be able to sit on someone and get a little draft and all of that and work together. But at the end of the day, like, I focused on me and how I could get the most out of myself, because I felt like if I got the most out of myself, then at least when I get to the finish line, whether I've had a really bad race or a really good race, I can be really proud of the effort I put in. So that's the way I think of it.
Good.
Well, I'm gonna see if there's another layer to the onion here. You've competed at both the individual races and also in team races.
Yes.
Is there a difference in mindset when you go from that individual race, whether it's a mass or a staggered start, to a team race?
Yeah.
Is there a difference?
Yes. For me, there is. It's an enjoyable difference. I am somebody who, like, deep down, I think I like wanted to be a part of this like team sport, because I'm way more motivated by things outside of myself. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, I don't know, but it's who I am. And so those days that we got to put on, we had like these relay socks, and we found them at a gas station in like 2010 or something like that. Our van had broken down. Our coach had put gas in the diesel, I think, as I remember it. And it was like mid-tour to ski. So everyone's like stress levels are a little high, and we just had like a couple hours to kill while they pumped the gas out. And we found these like red, white, and blue, like Pippi Longstocking relay socks. And this is kind of right when the U.S. ski team women were kind of coming onto the scene. We were trying to build this team because we were seeing, with the leadership of our coach, Matt Whitcomb, who's still the coach today, he's like, you start looking around and you realize that these teams that are high performing are teams. And they're not like they might be in an individual sport, but they're a team. And so we were missing, like, for a while there were 1 or 2 women on the US team at all. And now all of a sudden we had this like big crew of like 6 to 8 people, women, who are on the team. And we became like this actual high performing squad through a lot of work and a lot of time, like outside of just the ski world. Like, we traveled and lived together for 4 or 5 months every year on the road in Europe. And so if you aren't friends, like, it's a hard life. And so we took a lot of time to get that team dynamic. And this was just a piece of that. It was like, okay, we have these relays coming up. Like, how do we put something on that makes it feel different today? Because it isn't about us today. It's about our team. And those days, like, my my biggest dream when I was skiing was to win an Olympic medal on the team relay. Like that's what I wanted. If I had to put like a outcome goal, that was always on the list, top of the list. And I would have dreams about it. Like I would like visualize this success, and we have yet to secure like that relay team medal outside of a team sprint, like world championships, and obviously the gold medal at the Olympics for the team sprint, which is cool. It's a 2-person event. But I think I got a little off topic in that for me, I think my focus when it's a team sport of some kind or a team event is like it's focused on everyone else, and everyone else, like the effort is not for me today, it's for my team. And that was always more, I got more out of myself when I could get my mindset to think that way. And so even now when I go out and I like in like a race where I'm feeling like pain, like I think maybe everybody's brain gets this way. Like the first thought is always like, this doesn't even matter why. Like nobody cares that I'm in this race. I don't even care that I'm in this race. Like somebody just make the pain stop. It doesn't matter. I'll just like nobody's. It's not going to be a big deal if I just don't give it my all. But then like, you hear yourself say that once, and like there's something in my brain that's just like, no, man, that's not you. Like figure out how to focus on something that means something to you. So I will focus on, the fact that, I have friends who wish they could be out here, but they like, due to health reasons, can't be, right? Or, like the kids I coach, like if I tell them these things that they have to like, they can do these hard things, and here's ways you can think about it to like distract yourself, if I can. It's one thing to tell them that, but if I can't do it myself and I can't live it, and I'm not like trying to do it myself, I feel a little like, I'm like a little hypocrite kind of style. So I like these little things that get me. And then at the end of the day, I'm always thinking about like something else, someone else that's this, if it's too internal then it's not, it doesn't motivate me. I need it to be about something else. So maybe I connect with another runner on the trail, and who's like, go by someone who's struggling or something like that, and you give them a little word of advice, and like it fuels you too. And so I think that's why I love coaching so much now, because I get to like give back to the kids, the next generation, all the stuff that I've learned through my and eventually, maybe I'll run out of stuff that I learned to share, but right now I think where I get the most charge in life and in running and in any sort of competition is thinking about how this is affecting other people outside of me, and what I can do to affect those people at a great level. And so that's why the relays were so awesome. And that's where my mind is for team events. It is a different day. It's a more exciting, more fun, more like less pressure filled day for me, because I'm like, I know I can get my all when it's for someone else.
Well,
interesting.
Liz, I'm with you, and I'm going to take us back to part of your answer when you were on the trail saying, why am I here? No one cares. In fact, I don't even care at this point. And we've all been there. You're not alone. Yeah, I think we've all been there, at least everybody that I've talked to. And I'll take myself to that spot, and why I'd make the decision, and not to try to bring it back to me, why bring that decision not to go that way, not to quit, because I'm afraid that if I let myself quit there, that defines me. I'm a quitter. I quit there. I'll quit. Anytime something gets hard, I bail. And if I bail now, it's a slippery slope, not to use a skiing mountain analogy there.
Nice, Don.
To throw that in there. But I don't want to let myself become that person, that quitter. Now, there's times that you have to bounce out. There's times that is for safety. You've got to go. There's times that you feel something, you'll get injured if you – absolutely. You have to, but when it's just self-selection to be more comfortable to sit in a chair, and I know something good to drink when I get there, that's when I just say no. Just keep on going. I'm afraid to stop.
I feel the same way, Dawn. I know someday if I keep competing, like there's going to be a race where I need to drop out for those reasons you talked about. Mm-hmm. I've luckily never had to do that yet, and I know it would be just like you want to have that. Even runners where, like, I actually just had 2 friends run Rabbit Run, and they both didn't finish. They made it like 70 miles and they didn't finish. And I asked them what had happened, and they had totally legit reasons for dropping out. Like they couldn't eat, they were like vomiting. Like it's like stuff you gotta like you pull the plug, you know.
You get a pass for that.
Right, exactly. You get a pass. But both of them, you know, especially one was feeling like, God, I don't know. I feel like I could have made it to the finish, and he's like eating himself up about it, you know. And I'm sitting there going like, but you made a good choice, right? But I know internally I would have the same, like, I should have just finished, because at least I wouldn't feel this like guilt now that I had this like crew out there to help me, and like I did all this training, and I like, you know, sacrificed time with family and friends to do this stuff in the mountains I love to do, and then I didn't finish. And I imagine that's they're not alone in feeling that, and I wouldn't be alone in feeling that feeling. And so I think maybe if you're a runner who's struggling and find yourself dropping out of races with maybe not the best reasons, maybe the way you keep yourself in is like, I don't want to have that feeling. Like I don't want to have that feeling of guilt or like disappointment in myself. So I'm just going to keep going this one. I'm going to go 10 more miles, and then I'm going to see. And I'm going to go 10 more miles, and I'm going to see. I remember a race, it was a 50K in Norway, and a good friend of mine was, he was a teammate, he was racing it, and he comes by on like the first lap, and these laps are like 15-kilometer laps. And he comes through and he's like, I'm so far. He'd already been dropped by the team, by the lead crew, you know, he was just struggling. And I was like, hey, you should just go one more lap. Just go one more lap, you know? So he goes one more lap, he comes back through, and he's saying the same thing. I think I need to drop. And, you know, like, we're all just kind of like, just go one more lap. You can drop out anywhere in the lap. Just go one more lap. And sure enough, he like finishes the whole race, because he was just thinking about it one more lap. So maybe when it gets overwhelming and you think like, oh my God, I still have 50 miles to go, or I still have like 5K to go, and it feels like this eternity that you can't overcome. I think for myself, I have to think about it in smaller doses, like even overwhelming, like, you know, if people are struggling with mental health stuff, like those days that feel like I have to go this whole day, like I can't live with this feeling this whole day, you know? Well, don't go the whole day then. Like just go the next minute, and then the next minute, and maybe the next hour. But like knowing that like just breaking things into smaller pieces is like, it's overwhelming when you think of like the whole big picture sometimes, and just smaller. Like I think it's like, you just slow down, think of just like a small bite that you know you can take, and then see maybe there's another bite that you can take. And maybe not, but at least you got that one more bite, you know, or two more bites that you didn't think you could have. So I think that's how I like to think of it. It's just smaller doses.
You know, when you said that, and people are going to say, oh, Don's going to say this thing that he always says, and Scott's saying, I know he's about to say this. When you come into an aid station and you're the only one that thinks you should quit, then maybe you shouldn't. And that's what made me think of your 15-kilometer friend coming through in laps. You had complete confidence that he could continue on. You assessed him, you looked at him, and you said, you know what, I think your problem is inside your head, not inside your body. Take another lap, and then if it doesn't work itself out, I'll talk to you again, which you had to. But what a way just to keep going, keep momentum, not calling it quits, being a winner, because sometimes maybe what you're out there for that race is for that lesson. It wasn't for the victory or your personal best. Maybe the lesson hiding for you in that race, the reason that you signed up was for that lesson, to be, you know, your true self, a finisher, a competitor.
Yeah, I think like we spend, and I'm just as much a victim of this, if you will. Like we all think about like the training. What are we doing to train? Like what's that physical need that I need to get today? What's the goal today out on the trails or on the slopes or whatever it is? And so often I feel like we're missing so much of the mental piece of it. I mean, this is like, I've always been so interested in our brains. Like our brains are so much more powerful than even the best person out there. Like, I think Courtney Dauwalter is actually a really good example of this. Like she's really trying to find that next like scoop into the pain cave. And like, what does that scoop look like? How do I get there? You know, I'm going to get into the cave no matter what. How do I get to the next one? And I think even Courtney, like there is something in there that like I don't think any of us have really touched on. I've always felt that way. I feel like we have this thing that we don't even really fully understand in the medical field, and we definitely don't understand it fully in like this endurance field. And I think the more we try to understand what is going on up here and how can I get more of myself? Like, how can I distract myself to get a little more? Or, like, how do we train the mental piece? Like, can we train it just as much as we train the physical piece? And I think, like, the more we focus on that in those days, like, I'm certainly like, I am in this like injury phase right now, and it's like all I want to do is be outside. But at the end of, like, I'm learning something here. I never would have chosen this for myself. We all just want to go through whole life without injury or setback or anything, because it sucks, but you sit in the suck and you realize, you start to like see things that you wouldn't have seen if you were just riding the high. And so, like, for myself right now, just this small injury, like, I know I can look back and say I didn't do my like prehab stuff well enough. I ran too much, didn't do enough cross training. I wasn't eating the way I should be eating to make sure that I'm like doing the best things for my bones, which already need some more help. And like all these little things. And then even above all of that, it's like when movement stops for me, I am left with all of these emotional attachments that are like not healthy. Like, I don't want to feel these things. I don't want to think these things, but I do. And so becoming more comfortable with like, how do I get through this stage? Because I can't just like snap my fingers and be back to normal and be back to like doing all the things I want to be doing. Like, I need to learn how to get myself through this stage, this phase of like setback, because there's gonna be another one and it might be worse, and so I think when you have a setback, like, take the opportunity to learn something about yourself, because there's always something else you can learn. And if you do learn it, then when you are healthy again, I think it does play in your favor, and you can certainly pass that on to, for me, I'm always thinking like, oh, the kids I coach, how could this feeling that I have right now, how can I assimilate to them better when they have an injury or when they have like something in their family that doesn't go well, or something like that? Because being a skier and being a runner, you're being a whole person too. I mean, the sport it takes over your person, because it's like in your soul, and so like your soul is out there running with you also, and your soul is trapped in an injured body. And so it's so easy to assimilate like this, oh, I can't exercise, or I can't train, I can't be in the mountains like with my thoughts. Well, then who am I? What am I even doing? It's like me. I need my soul is my physical body. So when my physical body is hurt, my soul is hurt, and how to then, once you see that, it almost gives you like a peace to be okay to feel that, and then figure out, well, I'm not actually just my physical body. I have so many other things. I can like have new hobbies. I can take a class. I can go to a pottery, learn how to do pottery. I can write. I can do all these things. And it doesn't get me the same feeling as I want to have in the woods when I'm just out by myself with my adventure, and my thoughts and my breath. But it gets me something that's similar. And maybe that takes the edge off the like feeling that I can't do anything. Well, you can do stuff. You just have to, it's just different and just temporary, But,
and I think that it's just a chapter in the book.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
I just listened to a podcast that was featuring a guy named Fred Bryant, who was a co-author of a new book called Savoring, and he talked about an accident that he had that could have paralyzed him, and he was laid up for quite a while. He's a mountain climber, and he said that after that incident, he was able to frame future activities, or climbing a 14er in Colorado, or doing this big peak with his friends, that he was able to savor those moments after the accident or after the injury, and make it more colorful than what it wouldn't have been otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think that, like Don was saying, and like you were saying, there's lessons to be learned in all of these chapters in our life, whether it's a race that we're not going to win, we may have DNF'd, or we may have really crashed and burned, but those might be the best lessons for our overall well-being and health.
Absolutely.
So, Scott, is this the part of the podcast maybe it makes us better runners and maybe even better people too? Let's get very philosophical, because here's the golden nugget I picked up from Liz's comments when she said our soul is running with us. And I never thought of that. You have a companion, like a shadow if the sun's out. Your soul is running with you. And it made me think your soul doesn't care your pace, your speed. It's very loving, compassionate, empathetic. It is your true companion without judgment. If you want to hike, it's happy to hike. It just likes to be there and wants to be part of it. And I don't think we should rob the soul's joy by beating up on ourselves. Just be happy and enjoy it and run with your best companion.
Or a dog.
Or a dog.
Scott, this is where we are better people. You just broke you just dropped the champagne glass and it's all over the place. I was waxing eloquently with all of these things and you bring in the dog.
The dog can influence your soul too.
Yeah, okay, good.
Hey, Liz, as we're finishing up here, I'd be interested for any advice you would give for a runner that may think, you know what, maybe Nordic skiing is something that I can do if I live in a winter climate during the, instead of putting on my Gore-Tex shoes and my polar fleece running pants, maybe I should get a pair of Nordic skis. What would you suggest for somebody that wants to get into it? What's the best way?
It's cheap. Number one, it's cheap, Liz.
It's cheap. Yeah, it can be fairly affordable. There's a lot of like every town, if you live in a winter place, almost every town or a town nearby has a ski sale. And most of those ski sales now have some Nordic gear, and it does not have to be perfect. It just needs to work. If you're going to get into it, it's probably worth having a lesson or three. Maybe there's like some sort of place in town, like a center in town that offers that kind of thing. It's probably worth it. You can certainly gain a lot from the internet, but it might be helpful just to have that one-on-one type of, and yeah. I would get a one-on-one lesson, just because when I do lessons with people, it works so much better when it's like 2-on-1 or 1-on-1, just because that first initial learning phase, it can be really different, especially if you've never done anything where you slide across the snow. Like it's going to take a little bit. But I guess the main thing I would say is get your setup, get a lesson, I would say, and then just spend time on your skis, because there is a learning curve to this sport for sure. And it's whenever I talk to people learn I'm a Nordic skier, so they're like, oh my God, it's like the hardest sport in the world. Like I can do it for 10 minutes and I'm dead. And I understand, because it is a very hard sport. And because of the technical aspect, there is this initial learning phase where it feels like, oh my God, I can't do this. I can't stay within under 220 heart rate beats to even move. So just more time feeling comfortable on your skis, balance, all of that stuff, it plays a role. And just don't give up, because once you get off of that little lip, that initial phase, it's really fun. And it's a great cross training method in the winter, so that if you are trying to avoid injury, eventually everyone's going to get injured. And this is such an easy way to get an incredible cardiovascular and strength workout in the winter and not have any impact. Kind of like the pool, I'm going to keep the pool now that I've been injured and I'm learned how to swim again. It's I'm going to keep the pool in once a week, because it just I just have to do that for my body, and it's,
that's great.
You're not losing anything that way. And Nordic is a very, very accessible place to do that. Find a flatter trail. The downhills and the uphills might feel too much right off the bat. So find a flatter trail at the beginning too.
Well, I raised my hand so Scott could see that I had a question, and then you nailed them all. It's a fantastic cross train. Much like the pool, it's a place to go to rehab, and strengthening your body can be a way to prevent injury when you're out there pounding yourself along the trail. All of that stuff adds up, meaning that if you're always pounding, something's going to finally give in and be fatigued and cause a micro injury of some kind. And that's a great cross train. And I've got to think that anybody that's around the snow, if they haven't already embraced it, ought to go to that garage sale or that ski sale and hook up with a lesson and make this part of their strengthening and program. Because you can't run on a snowy trail. It's hard to keep efficient on a snowy trail.
Totally. Yeah. And it's a beautiful way to be in the woods in the winter, which is what originally got me psyched, because there's like this groomed path in the winter that like you just get to go in the trees. Or if you're in Park City, we don't have a ton of trees, which I really miss about Vermont. I really loved like disappearing into the woods. That's a little harder to find here, but you can still kind of disappear into like the meadows.
And I think also you mentioned that the community sounds very parallel to trail running, that if you can find another Nordic cross country skier, they're going to welcome you and say, hey, we're meeting at the trailhead at this time, bring your skis along and we'll show you a fun time.
Yeah,
so
totally. I mean, if you have like that local, like next door kind of app, I know like whenever I see somebody on there, like, I want to get into Nordic skiing, like I need some help. Like there's like 50 answers, because people are just like, you just want the people, like new people, to experience what you find joy in the winter. And so that might be a good way too, to be like, hey, I'm looking into getting into cross country skiing. Like, does anyone have any suggestions? And you might get a free old pair of skis or something like that too. So.
Well, Liz, I'm confident that your students are super lucky to have you as a coach. You can sense the passion, you can sense all of the experience and your willingness to share and to help build others. So your student athletes are very lucky to have you.
Oh, thank you very much. It's been really fun to be on here. And yeah, thanks for calling and setting this up. This has been really fun for me as well. And looking forward to listening to more of your podcasts. Keep them up.
And we're looking forward to seeing you on the top a podium coming up here soon. There's a lot of races in Utah. You know, if you want to migrate out here to California, we can set you up with some good races out here as well.
Well, I've never done 100, and that's always been on my I would love to know what it is like out there in your brain when you're in 100 miles. Like, I want that experience. So once I get on top of my injuries, I'm like, that's the first goal. And maybe I'll look up one in California.
You know what I would recommend is go volunteer at either the Wasatch 100
or the Bear,
or
the Bear,
one of those 100-mile, the Bear. Yeah. And volunteer at not an early aid station. Volunteer at a later aid station, like 60 mile, 70 mile, 80 mile. Go do that, and you'll be hooked. And if you still do that, and you'll be hooked.
I paced my friend in Leadville a couple years ago, the last 30 miles, and it was so fun. I wanted to just be a professional pacer. Like, I think it's so fun to be out there, just shooting the shit with somebody out there, suffering with them, even though you're not suffering nearly like what they are. But it's kind of like that job of let's get to the finish line. Like, how do you keep you happy and fueled? And I loved that. That was so fun. So I felt like that was where I was like, I got to do one of these.
Well, you're a big team player, and I think you would love the 100 because there is a teammate, and it's your soul that you're running with, and you'll never ever learn yourself as well as you do when you're at the end of those to find out who you really are.
He froze up.
True. Yeah, I love that. Okay. You guys got me hooked.
Okay. Well, and you've got us hooked. We got to get out there and do some Nordic skiing to cross train a little bit and see some of the joy.
Awesome. Cool. Well, if any of your listeners have any questions that they want to throw my way, I have an Instagram account. I don't check it that often, but you could certainly message me there. I think it's Liz Hill Steven. And I would be happy to answer any questions that your listeners have.
Right on. Do you still?
That's very kind.
You do some coaching still. I heard you say coaching. So if someone in your area wanted to get a lesson or three and become more efficient, maybe even a 3-time Olympian, giving them a few hints, that wouldn't be bad knowledge to drop on some folks. Yeah, I have an Olympian coach. How do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, I think Instagram would work, or my email. I'll give you my email. My email's Steven, which is LSTEPHEN @parkcity SS as in like ski and snowboard, ss.org. And that's an easy way to get a hold of me. Or of course, like on social media. I think if you just Google my name, I'll come up. And yeah, and either of those is fine. Is great. And I would love to help anyone get involved in the sport, because it is like, it's an incredible community and everyone needs more friends. Nobody has enough friends is my view on life. So you'll at least get a few more of those, even if you end up hating the sport.
Hey, Liz, you realize we have at least 50 listeners. Maybe you shouldn't have put that email out there.
Okay, so great.
You're going to get inundated by all 50.
True. You're safe.
Hey, cool. Here's one last question. I'm curious, how many Olympians live in Park City?
Oh,
I know two now.
I think. Okay, so I think the last Olympics, we had like, I think it was like the same as like a small country. Like I want to say that we had somewhere between like 30 and 40 Olympians that like claimed Park City as their home, maybe even 50.
Wow.
And of course this is the base of the US ski team. So
right.
They could claim anyone on the US team in some ways, but I actually just in the neighborhood that Steve and I live in, I know of like 7 that live in this neighborhood. Many medalists included in that. And like, so there's like 20 that I know of that are just retired skiers that live here still, or snowboarders or some sort of winter sport athlete. A lot of speed skaters actually live here too, because we have the oval, and we have one of the few jumping facilities in the country too. So there's a lot of Olympians here for sure. It's kind of like the joke of the town, like, are you an Olympian too, kind of thing. But we have an incredible training base here, and you guys should actually, I don't know if you've giving you more people to like interview, but Sophia Laukley, do you know her name? I think she either just won or is in the process of winning the Golden Trail Series. And she is an active Nordic racer on the US team as well. She's actually training in Norway this summer. She's been training in Norway just so she could get some more running in. But she's like winning the Golden Trail Series and is a damn good Nordic skier. And wow. She would be a really fun person to have on here. She's like a little mountain goat. It would be kind of a fun podcast. If you want her contact, I can put you guys in touch. I'm sure she'd love it. So
it'd be awesome.
Yeah, that'd be great.
That'd be awesome. We may have to change the title of our podcast.
Yeah,
trail running and Nordic Nation.
Yeah, exactly. Nordic Nation, I think, actually is a podcast already.
Oh, it is.
Is it?
Yeah, cool.
Hey, Liz, thank you so much for coming on. We've learned a lot. We've had a lot of fun with you, and I think that we've come away with some golden nuggets. Yeah. So thank you so much.
Me too. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Liz.
Now get some skis and go out and V1.
Oh, Scott, don't even try.
Sorry. Okay.